Hi, Vanita. It's lovely to
Hello,
have you
how are
here.
you? Lovely to
I'm
join you
good.
today.
I'm super excited. And as we were just saying, I thought this was going to be a really interesting conversation for anybody out there that currently works in HR, but they're kind of wondering what the consulting
Mm.
world of HR looks like. So yeah, that's kind of the focus that I want to have for this conversation. But I'd love to start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got into HR, what you studied, and what you're currently doing. Would love to know about that.
Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me to have this little chat with you. I know, we've chatted before and it's been lovely, but lovely to introduce myself. I have my HR consultancy, Red Umbrella Consultancy. I'm also a mom of two boys, the most important job. But yes, how I got into it was Oh, Rose, I'm so sorry. Please, can we stop and just start again?
No,
I won't do that. I won't,
no,
because
it's fine. No
I,
worries.
I,
I'll
I
cut
won't
it.
do. I promise. Okay, we'll cut that and
Yeah,
we'll
we'll cut
start
that.
again. I won't
But
do
I
it
like
again.
that.
Okay,
I like that saying that you're a mom of two, and I like to
it's
keep
my life. Okay, no, I will keep that.
cool.
Okay, you let me go and we start
And
again.
then yeah, how did you got into HR? I'd love to know that.
Okay. So how I got into HR was I actually studied criminal psychology. Well, I did criminology and psychology. And when I left school, that's what I wanted to do. And then when I was in my third year, I had to go and do a practical at Portsmouth Prison. And I just realized then that it wasn't necessarily what I'd wanted to do. So I went overseas. And I started working while I was studying. I had done a student job at the call center. So when I went overseas, then I started working there and slowly but surely got into some training and got into recruiting. And I thought, oh, I really enjoy this, and sitting in with the managers and assisting with staff. And I just thought this was actually what I wanted to do. So I came back and then furthered my study in the HR field and worked in HR ever since. So that has been a really, really great experience. It's been many years of lots of good times, times that have been tricky. But when you're dealing with people, it's never, there's never a dull moment, but it's just always so wonderful dealing with people dynamics. So I really have enjoyed that.
I'd love to hear a little bit more in terms of your degree, because
Yes.
I'm not South African, so I don't know how it goes here when you study psychology, what branches you can take and forward. I actually never heard criminology, not in South Africa. So what's the kind of work landscape looking like when you study criminology? Is it like assessments for people in prison, testifying in trials? What type of work do you do?
No, well, as a criminologist, I mean, this was going back quite a few years ago. And it was, so you can go into things like profiling, and you work obviously very closely with the police. And that was where I had wanted to go. I said, no, this is what I want to do. I want to understand behavior, human behavior, and to go down the criminology route. So, yeah, I mean, it would be whichever option you take, but that was where I wanted to go. I thought I was going to be, maybe I'd watched too many Law and Order programs, I'm not sure. But and it was really interesting, and I loved my degree, and I really, really enjoyed the work that I did. But I realized then in my third year when I did my practical that I think it would have just been quite difficult for me. It was a little bit hard. So I decided to, rather than go into the work industry.
Yeah, the kind of work environment. Yeah, I hear
Work
you.
environment.
It is similar back home as well when you study psychology, and then you have different venues, educational, and the work environment being HR, and then you also have like you would say for criminology. So it is the different, and counseling as well, personal one-on-ones.
Mm.
um, So that is interesting, where you apply, the knowledge of, as you said, the behavior of science, the science of behavior, or also people dynamics in different environments. And I guess that you do have to like see how you feel about them. I remember when I did my degree, my internship, like my kind of applied time of the degree at the end of the degree was with, it was psychosis and like dual diagnosis, also people exposed to addictions. And
Yes.
and you can tell, what I could tell was that it was absolutely draining my energy, working with psychologists and in that kind of dual diagnosis with addictions. And you have to put yourself out there and just explore. This was obviously like a rehab center, and then the other one was educational, was with kids, and I could also tell this is draining my energy too. So then you have to, we're passionate about it, but then you also know when it's taking too much out of you and not necessarily giving back in the same level.
And I think, especially with criminology, it's obviously a very harsh field. And I didn't feel that I think that they always say, like, a good psychologist has someone that they have a good psychologist, and they have someone that they can debrief with. And I had a family friend, and she used to be a trauma counselor. So she used to be called out to all these scenes. And when we chatted a little bit more, I started thinking, oh, I don't know if that is if I'm going to enjoy it that much, and that it wouldn't have an effect on me. And we like to, even though there's sometimes in HR that we have to deal with things that aren't as nice, it's not as heavy as that. And I think for me that was just the key thing. So yes, but I have it is still very interesting, and it's still, I also think it was my age, to be honest. I mean, what are we then, like 21, and doing that, as opposed to maybe delving down into that route now, what it would look like. But yes,
because
I love
don't know if this happens. What has been happening, when what I have experienced is that you build your career in HR, and you first get a lot of exposure to, it's lovely to get a lot of exposure as a generalist, right, to all the areas of HR. You could start, because it's the only opportunity, as a specialist, and that's a little bit like, you always wonder how other things in HR look like. So if you're only focused on recruitment, right, for example, but then you get exposure to everything, and then you start kind of skilling up and so at the beginning, I guess it's all processes and following up on making sure things happen. But then as you skill up, the skill that pays the most, just to say it in a way, or that adds the most value, it's really when you're able to work through people dynamics that are complex in nature. That's when a founder, a CEO would be like, I'm valuing the work of this department. Not that they don't value the rest, but that's when you can take over them when it comes to the people dynamics in the company. So at the end of the day, and you find yourself, you're always solving problems and complex in nature. When you have a few years of experience in HR, so you get to that point where maybe at the beginning it didn't necessarily feel 100% comfortable, just because you developed the experience and you got the results, that you got to like jump into more more complexity. Has that been your experience as well?
100%. And it's one of the things that I absolutely love is, after having the years of experience, you walk into a business and you see that you've got an incredible CEO, but he is literally in charge of everything, and he is driving the business, and he's, making sure that the business is profitable. But then he's also got, she's also got her staff members and her employees that she needs to look after. And there's so much around that. With dynamics, compliance, there are so many different areas, and it's more just that, pats on the back where we come in and we give them a little pat and we say, it's all going to be okay. Like, don't worry about it. I know it might seem very overwhelming having to take on this and having to care for your employees and make sure that they are okay, and make sure the business is okay, and make sure everyone's okay. It can really be quite overwhelming for them. So it's almost partnering with them to say, we've got you. Like, we're going to drive this, we'll guide you, and it's okay. Everyone is a specialist with their different talents, and you go and do what you need to do, and like, we've got you. I think that's my main thing. It's always just that reassuring, there we go, reassuring back rub to say, no matter what happens, we'll get through it, and we're going to make it something great. And just providing solutions to problems, and also, being, you and I being able to be creative in our industry. And there's so many wonderful things. Long gone is the day where, HR is just making sure that everyone is fine and compliance is, and, the contracts are in place. That's important. But, moving forward and seeing what can we do with our teams, and how can we really make the employee experience great, so that people want to work for the company, and they want to, see their careers progress in a way that they want to achieve their goals. And that is the really exciting stuff. And when I think CEOs or business owners see that, they realize the value. And that's how also I got into my consultancy. My dream had always been to be able to assist small to medium businesses, and regardless of the number of employees, some might have 5, some might have 50, and depending on their needs of how much, but generally, full-time HR sitting there every day from 8 to 5 is not needed, but then companies still want the expertise. So when I was retrenched from my company that I'd worked for, I saw the opportunity to really go and do this. And I've never looked back. Being able to, empower and encourage business owners and their staff has been really, really awesome.
Yeah, we share a very similar how we got into the world of consulting, very similar way to get into it. And I think the one thing for me as well is that sometimes in that trajectory of like partnering with the CEOs, you have to kind of, it's not oppose them, but you have to have a very like strong footing in terms of how you're leading the people team, because sometimes it is more about telling them, listen, let's not go that way, let's do something different. And they really, really appreciate that. Obviously, there's a trust relationship, right? Like, I'm not going to say from the start, you obviously need to build that trust. And it's all about them understanding your thought process, understanding, again, your advisory of expertise, like with the Labor Relations Act and basic conditions. But then also to be able to tell them, no, let's do something different, or let's stick to this. And I think when that happens, they can feel like, okay, it's not on my plate. She's got it. And as long as there's a feedback loop in terms of how you report on how things are happening. And of course, it's not only up to you. You have to have a team to work with. So that would be the manager of the position, or if you have a labor attorney helping you with a case, or so it really is about you pulling strings and making sure all happens. So that's the one thing. And then the other thing is, for me, has been really important to also get very clear as to what is the problem that needs to be solved, and what is the outcome that we're expecting, and timeframes. Because usually you can find yourself in the midst of everything, and everything is so calm. But you just need to persevere, and you're going to see through. And so making sure those 3 things are part of the discussions with your CEO, it's extremely important for them to reflect and be like, that was a win, and that was a win. And again, building that trajectory and outcome-based department, which I think is especially important for consulting. Do you see it that way as well?
Absolutely. It also provides, especially with timeframes, it gives people guidance, and it gives them confidence to know that this isn't something that will just carry on forever and ever. And even though there are things that there are distractions that happen, or in a business, something can be going one way, and there's a little issue, and then it turns a bit, but it helps bring people back onto track. And I think that accountability is so important, because it makes everyone accountable. So if we go in and we say, this is what we'd like to do, this is what we think we should do, these are the timelines, but we'd like to do it by then, if it holds not only the business owner or the CEO, but as well as the employees and us as consultants, all accountable, and it allows us to take ownership for our tasks that we need to do in making the project happen, and see it, really flourish. So I think that is incredibly important. It also it provides security. I always say this, sometimes employees will need boundaries, and so do the CEOs. And it's important. You can only implement those boundaries if you have that trust relationship there, and people can see that there are times when you have to say, no, we're not going to go this way, and they might not like the answer, but they trust you to provide the best advice. And I think when that happens, there's a sense of security, like with my two boys, having boundaries in place. Actually, even though sometimes they don't like it, or anyone, there's a bit of pushback, it actually creates security, because and it provides clarity. And that is absolutely key when you're working with teams, so that no one's on a different page, or someone's going off on the side, and that has really been key as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you so much, and I think that policies in place are so key for the way we operate, because maybe this is not something that people know about HR, but what happens with policies is that you have a problem to solve, and then you use the policy, a framework, to know how to act on that situation. And something that people don't know is that what we do as HR is that we set a way to go about solving that problem, meaning that if we're ever to see the problem again, we have to solve it in the same way, because that's the fairness across board. And that is so important, because when it comes to people dynamics, any manager, any CEO that's not looking at it from a policy point of view may be inclined to act differently with different people, just because we try accommodate, or we try, we understand what they're going through, and but it's like, no, this is how to go about it, because that's the precedent we have set in the past. And I think that it might sound a little bit harsh, but I do think that is exactly what you're saying. It gives security and a feeling of reassurance that you have a fair process in place, and that you're going to implement across board the same no matter what, right?
And being consistent along with that. So it wasn't, yes, we're fair, but it didn't look like this in a certain way, and then suddenly, 6 months later, we changed our tune. It's about being consistent. So I think being fair and consistent, those are two very key things, because that does, where you stand then as an employee, as a manager, the way forward, and it just provides clarity. There's no question marks, and it doesn't, it allows for there not to be any favoritism. It allows for employees to then respect their managers as well, because they're seeing that they are literally going according to and following the policies and procedures. And that is very important. I think it's one of those things that, and maybe as a small business, people maybe take it for granted if they have a small business. Actually, a lawyer said to me, no business should ever say that they are small. So, even if they have 10 employees, that doesn't mean that they're a small business. So she mentioned that, and she said, no. And so for those businesses that only have 10 employees, I think sometimes where maybe a family member might be the accountant, and also the owner, and also the HR, and also all these other different roles, and lines get blurred very quickly. And I think where it's so key is that by having those policies and procedures in place, it also sets the tone. And if you've got an employee coming into the business and there isn't something like that, well, then who makes the decisions? What happens when this situation arises? And it really, really, so it is important. And even though small businesses might not see the need for it, it is so vital. And I always say, even if you only have 5 employees, still have those in place, because one day you will grow, and then you'll have more than 5 employees, and it's already there. You're not trying to fumble your way through deciding, well, what do we do in a situation like this?
Yes, exactly. I feel like the companies that have had a bit of experience in terms of how to deal with situations with employees, they would not hesitate and know the benefit of it. While new companies, maybe younger professionals, will doubt, do we really need this? And then I'm also an advocate of the earlier you put this in place, it feels more natural to work with it, as opposed to you then having to like a whole change. Like it's like, do we have HR now? What? And then there's question marks. So we also advocate, put this place from the very beginning in place, and then we know that we can work with that as your framework. I also think it helps managers, because managers have this, they manage teams and they manage functions and outcomes to take place. But then they, when it comes to people dynamics, they need someone to, work with. And that's when they tap into the HR manager to be like, this is the situation. How do we go about it? And it feels reassuring, I guess, for them not to have to maybe making calls on their own, and to know that they can fall back into a process. So it's also a benefit added for the manager to have, the HR leg to work with people dynamics.
And certainly to provide that guidance for them, so that they're exactly that then, the manager is doing his entire role, he's fulfilling his duties and responsibilities. And then when there's a question mark, just having that person that he can pick up the phone and say, Eek, I don't know what to do, this has happened, and you can just walk them through it. It's like any of us. I mean, we work with labor lawyers, really, really fantastic guys. And when there's a questionable little something that pops up, just to be able to, drop them a voice note or give them a call and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what, and am I on the right path? And them to be, yes, absolutely. Or and so it just provides that, again, that reassurance and then confidence for if there is a situation to be able to go back and say, this is what we're doing, and we have the confidence that we can say that because we know that we do.
And when it comes to your consulting work, I'd love to hear the type of projects that you're involved, from when you start with a client, and also maybe talk us through like what has been like your biggest piece of work, consulting work that you had done for clients. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. Sure. I think it's unfortunate, but it's not bad. But unfortunate because the biggest work is always when it comes to retrenchments, and trying to help clients manage that, just because it's such an emotional process, and it's not always a pleasant one. So I say unfortunate because you're dealing with a situation where people are being told that they no longer have a job, but there are always silver linings. And I remember doing this one project, and we had to retrench this lady, and she was a machine operator in a factory, but she loved baking cakes. And she has now got a very successful cake baking business. And so I always try. And so even though it seems quite a heavy project, and when it comes to the retrenchments, being able to, again, provide that support to managers, see people pull together during a time when things are a little bit rocky, be able to lay out a clear process so that managers feel secure and employees feel secure that this has been done in the right way. Someone's not staying on because they know the boss. Just making sure that there's security around that, and then also seeing the success stories that come from it, and seeing how people come out of a difficult time and also pull each other out of a time like that, and the bonds that are formed during a time as well. So it isn't always great. It's not a pleasant experience for anyone to go through. But I mean, me myself, having been retrenched, and your concerns, but then you have a look at just, there is something beautiful that comes from it. And it's a big project, but being able to carry that out successfully is always great. And it leaves the managers feeling like they've also, even though they've had to, the CEO, even though he's had to take away someone's job, he's done it with respect and dignity. And, and I think that's the main thing, is always making sure that those people leave. Because initially when you're retrenched, even though it's not your fault, I think you can take a bit of a confidence knock and you go, oh, hold on a minute. And will I be able to find something else? And what about my people that I work with and my colleagues and the relationships? And all these sort of questions go through your mind. But then seeing people come out of that sort of process and their confidence is back and they're ready to, take on the next role or business, whatever it is really, really rewarding. And then there've been other projects that also aren't, as heavy as that. But I think implementing great career progression plans, performance management systems that see people allowed to define their own individual goals and incorporate it into their daily goals, their team goals, and see people achieve that and actually get a sense of achievements. I think that's also been some great projects. And doing it with the wonderful online tools that we have and systems. And it just brings about a sense of, the employees wanting to go for it and actually get on board with that. That has also been great projects.
Yeah, I hear you. It's so interesting because I love to, as a consulting company, to know what are those moments that feel like a win, like you've done a good job. Again, because it's outcome based for us. It's not the same as your in-house, and then you can get maybe pulled into things that are HR-ish. But for us, it's like you're being hired for a job, right? And there's an outcome.
Yeah.
And it's important to know, like, when is the job well done and that it feels good. And so exactly as what you were saying, we also feel with anything that has to do with terminations, there's always a way that you do it that makes you feel this was done correctly. And as you said, keep everybody's dignity. And that feels good. And then performance as well. When you are able to spot an opportunity and be able to give to make a promotion available just because you were following this person's career and they're ready for the opportunity. And those are feels like a real win. So I guess it's really important for anybody in consulting to understand for themselves, when does it feel rewarding? Because otherwise you can get really caught up in the day to day, and again a little bit lost in terms of like why you're doing what you're doing, or are we going to see this till the end? It's important to know what are those moments that feel like this is so rewarding, right?
I think also driving, and then the really fun stuff, like your HR initiatives. I say HR initiative, for instance, taking company values. A company has their values and they've worked really hard at, putting it out there and saying, this is what we do, but then actually getting the employees to take it on board and incorporate that into their own daily lives, because that's how they live out the company values. And, things like ownership or accountability, and then being able to do, because you've got to make it fun and rolling out little programs, exercises, whatever it is, and just seeing employees engage. And that's also awesome, because you can have, depending on your industry and the industries that you work in, you can have certain employees who maybe don't like to engage that much. But suddenly, and where they go from sort of being quiet to actually being the first one who wants to get in there and get busy with the project. So that's also really fun.
Yeah, I hear you. And, I remember my days when I used to work, for permanent employment, right? With going in the office and having the teams. And it always feels like the work environment is one where you spend a lot of time with the people around you. But it's not people that you choose to. Like, it's not like your family and your friends, right? Like, these are people that came to your life just because they got a role. So you always start with a very you don't know much, you don't know what framework kind of to use in terms of how to interact with these people, right? So I think companies that get that right in terms of the right culture, they bridge those gaps in terms of what do we have in common, right, as a team, and that can make a massive difference in the way someone perceives the work. If you work with people that you think are cool and exciting and that you can speak the same language, that's a very different dynamic as to if you go to work. And again, these are people that you're not choosing to be around, but you just do the job with them, right? So there's obviously the part around time, right? Like, the more time you spend, if you spend more years in a company, obviously you're going to create more strong relationships. But I guess culture is what allows you from the very beginning to feel connected to people and to feel like, oh, we're in this together, we're trying to do the same and we share the same way of doing things, which I think is what organically you don't have with colleagues, but that
No.
culture bridges that gap, right?
Definitely. And that is so important that, as an HR consultant coming into a business, that I always spend time, even if, with my clients, I will, for those that are, I'm based in Cape Town. For those that are in Cape Town, I will go and pop in and, go and sit and in the office. And you really do, because that's the only way that people learn to trust you as well, is that sort of visibility, but online presence as well. So online and in office. And it really makes a big difference when you can, I don't want to say, what's the word I'm looking for? When you can tap into that company's culture and you can see, because you've got to know when you want to roll out these projects, you're going to know if it's good and how you need to, what's the word I'm looking for? Make it unique for that company, customize it for that company. And that is it's key. Otherwise, it's just going to fall flat.
Yeah, 100%. And something as well, again, going back to being a nature consultant for businesses, that I find, like, for me, it's like key that I need to know is, what is this company doing? And I like to go numbers, right? Like, okay, what's your product? And who do you sell it to? And what are you striving for? Are we in a growth strategy? Or, like, I need to know those things before I interact with the rest of the company, because you kind of have to, like, understand what are we trying to do here? Is it motivating staff members? Is it, like, telling them or reinforcing a change that's happening? Like, you really need to frame that so that HR can do the most intentional work. I remember I had a little while ago a conversation with an HR person, and they wanted assistance from a consultancy to develop job descriptions. And so I asked the person, right, the HR representative, okay, so what does the company do? Because I couldn't, when you're still like, I kind of understand it, but I need to know more. And she couldn't give me that answer. So I'm like, I can't work as a consultant if I don't know your business, right? Like, what business are you in? It almost feels like it's not clear enough for me to make an impact, right? If I don't know what you're busy with, what's keeping your mind busy as a CEO. So yeah, that I think it's also very important from a consulting, that while you take care of the people dynamics, you need to understand business. If you don't understand business, you're not going to be able to have that kind of feeling, the reassurance of you taking over the people, because they're going to know, like, she doesn't really, or he doesn't really understand what we're trying to do here, right?
Absolutely. And it's so important. You've always got to picture yourself as being part. Well, I just always imagine myself as being part of that team and working for that team, working with that team for the company. Yes, I'm independent, but I'm fully merged into making sure that we achieve the goals together. And it's not a them and us and they and us, and we're all in it together. And I think that's so important when it comes to when I engage with a new client. With a new client, the first thing I do is, have a chat, see why they've reached out to me, what it is that they're looking for, and then have a little bit more, obviously, know a bit more about their business. But I think going and having a look at what structure they have in place, if they have any HR structures in place, anything in place. If not, it's like doing a little HR health check and just seeing those things that really need to be in place that aren't. So your policies and procedures, those regardless of how long the company's been going for. And then look at so these are the necessities that we have to get to, and these are the nice to haves, and this is what we're going to do. And it goes back to what you were saying about a time frame. So let's focus on getting this in place, because that can't happen unless we have this and our building blocks and our foundation. And that's also proven to be really important.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, that understanding of that kind of gap analysis that you're doing over the HR department, and kind of really trying to understand their business case. Because we are consultants, we are also business owners, right? So it's natural for us to have to operate with that framework of like, okay, you're in business, there's basics to being in business, you know, your product, your revenue, your cost spend. And so I think that again is from using a consultancy, and how you frame that conversation with the CEOs is that you understand business, right? So it is, I believe they appreciate that positioning, right, when it comes to engaging with a consultancy.
Especially because they trust in. Sorry, go ahead. They trust in you.
Yeah.
They are trusting you with their most important asset, which is actually their people. And because they need their people to be working with them, for them, and growing the business along with them, alongside them. And so it's a partnership. And, you know, as I said, they do, that trust is just so important.
Yeah, it's so important because I especially for performance management, the way I feel it is that I know the CEO doesn't have time to be doing decisions because they need to be running the business. What I'm doing here is representing that kind of like executive perspective on the business, and giving of my time, obviously paid time, but to spend time with the employees, so that that executive mindset can be cascaded down to everybody in the business. And you know, I think it's an important focus to have, and again, where they can feel like, okay, you know, things are happening. I mean, obviously, there are certain companies that operate where manager has a lot of the HR functions within, you know, the managerial responsibilities, which I think is great. It means that these managers know the business case, and they know how to hire, how to fire, and the whole thing. But sometimes it can feel like you're asking too much of a manager, because usually what will happen is that if they focus on those things, they're unfortunately not going to be able to be as operational as you want them to be. Like they don't have, you know, like technical responsibilities because you made them HR managers. So it is that kind of, you know, like you can have them doing their job and then having this HR partner that's very strong helping them, as opposed to having the, you know, like them do the HR work, if that makes sense.
And I think it's, well, exactly, they've got too much on their plate, and then it starts at, you know, they, and a manager, CEO starts getting overwhelmed with all these other things, because it does take time. It takes time to understand the employee. You know, certainly when it comes to performance management, does the employee even understand what their duties and responsibilities are and what's required of them? And in order not just to do the job, but to do it well, so that they feel satisfied, so that you know, the employee also doesn't, yes, let's just call it what it is. There are days when you wake up, you know, an employee will go to work and they're like, I'm just here to see 5 o'clock and then go home, you know, regardless of maybe something's going on you know, in their personal life. But the aim is to make sure that our employees really do love their job and love what they do and find satisfaction out of there and can grow their careers. And even if it's in a very flat structure, you know, I think the perception is sometimes, oh, well, it's a very flat structure, there's no way for me to really grow and move here. But that's not always the case, because they can still take on other skills, they can learn other skills, they can grow their I suppose their skills and their talents and their abilities, and that gives them such a sense of achievement. And so it's not necessarily always going up, but sometimes, I mean, you don't want to say you can grow horizontally. I don't know what female will want to hear that.
Very true. And sometimes it happens to managers that have like a technical department to you know, they're responsible for, that they doubt around taking on the duties of management of people, because it's not within their skill set. So now they're going to go into something that may pay better, but it's not giving them that projection of growth in their technicality, right? And you go like, you know, you only feel like, yeah, you're definitely going to get exposure kind of to the world of business and people management. But you are going to, you know, if you're someone that gets the most energy and fulfillment out of your technicality of what you're really good at, then it is something to consider that, again, you have a different model where you always rely on your HR partner to help with the people dynamics. Yeah.
And some people just don't want to manage. They want to grow, but they don't want to manage people. And we've had people, when we sit down and we look at their career progression plan, we look and say, well, the next step, and they go, well, I don't want to be a team lead. I don't want to deal with people. And that's okay. It's fine. But I think sometimes just that natural progression is then you've got to step up, and it's not their strong skill. So some people will embrace it and say, it's not my strong skill, but I'd like to learn. And others I say, I'd like to rather not. And then we find another way to grow them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a very interesting conversation to have, I believe, and for CEOs to understand how their business operates. Again, do you rely on the one person that's kind of providing that support to all of your managers, or are you expecting your managers? Because also, if you think about how skill sets are being paid in the market, you also want to make business sense to now be having 50% of your management time focused on people dynamics, as opposed to whatever is that marketing, sales, or whatever they need to be doing, as opposed to having one dedicated resource that will be doing those check-ins. And again, what's important there is, how do you measure success, right? Like, what is that HR partner doing so that they can provide that consistent role to these managers? So what check-ins is HR doing? And then something as well, I don't know if you feel this way, how you design your performance management, but something that we find extremely insightful is that for performance management, whatever check-ins you have with employees, to always have the manager in there, and to not have the manager lead, to HR facilitate the session, not lead, but facilitate. Because what happens when you have 3 people in a room is a very different set of dynamics as if you have one-on-one, especially if it is a manager that sees person every day, because it's almost like, why are we now meeting about this? We meet every day to discuss work. It's like, it's a very different conversation. And if it is guided by HR, usually what happens is that manager and that employee have to paraphrase and have to explain to you, HR, the technicalities of the role. And when they do that, the other person is like, oh, that's how my manager understands what I do. And they didn't know about it. So it's extremely revealing to have that third party that doesn't know anything to say no way about what you have to do. Do you also structure it like that?
Yes, I think we have different ways. So there'll be check-ins just based on the employee to see where they're at when it comes. And sometimes that's just HR and the employee. So, I'll meet with them. But when it comes to the performance management, definitely having the manager in the room. And I find what happens, I suppose it's like a disciplinary almost, by having, well, not that is what I mean with the structure is where you have someone, and then suddenly, yes, there's the manager and the employee, but there's a neutral. There's like so you don't go in, guns blazing. It's almost, people are almost a bit disarmed of everything that is frustrating them, and they go and say, okay, explain it to me. What are we looking at here? Exactly, that paraphrasing. And then it does, where an employee or an employer, or the manager will think like, how could, and you can almost see it happening where they go, how could they think that was okay? But anyways, they obviously did. So that's where we need to remedy the situation and just bring it down to plain level and saying, right, do you understand that this is what's required, and do you take it on as such? And I think that is valuable, because just going back to, it feels like people are disarmed when they come in there. It's not like you have to fight, and it's not the manager saying to you, or whether they were just having lunch together and now they have this meeting and now the manager's going, right, now look at this. So having HR there, definitely it neutralizes a situation.
Yeah, and you had a good point that it is a setup that obviously during disciplinary sessions it's the same. And I think what's important about that, to kind of replicate that, is to almost train it like a muscle. Like, it's okay to have hard conversations, and it doesn't have to be, because then they will think disciplinary is like, something went wrong and I'm being disciplined. Well, you go,
No.
if you do that same setup in performance, you're telling people, doesn't matter, we're going to see how things are going, but we still the three of us, and things still need to be said, and points of view needs to be shared. So it's almost like training that muscle of effective communication, which is something that people will kind of shy away on their own if HR is not there and not trying hard, just because maybe a lot of assumptions in terms of like, yeah, we work together, we know how things go. And also, again, shying away from that hard conversation. Oh, it will come right, or, we'll see how it goes. I'd rather not pay attention to that now. So you're very intentional to say it in a way.
I love your analogy of, training a muscle, because it's those awkward conversations that everyone avoids, and do we have to? But actually, when you're doing it regularly, when you touch and base, and you actually, and I've seen where staff will look forward to those sessions, because it's not always a negative thing. It can be positive, because you are helping them. So an area that was underdeveloped, they are putting effort into, they are doing things, they feel the support from the company, whether it be from HR, the manager together. And again, it instills that sense of confidence that they can do it, even though they didn't want to take it on. They are taking it on, and look at that, they are doing a great job. So it really, really, really is. And that's why I say performance management, and the bad reputation that performance management has. I'll say that. People say performance management, it seems very negative, but it's actually, it can be a very positive thing. And it actually just provides so much clarity. And so, yes.
Because also there's something in South Africa where, because of our legal framework, when you performance manage someone, you're already in a disciplinary process. And so I guess there's a global understanding of what performance management is, but then there's something nationally here with a legal framework, which is you're already in trouble when you do perform. So it's almost like you have to say, no, this is the performance management, the proactive one, the one that we always do.
The good one, not the bad one.
But I agree with you 100%. And something that I do in my sessions that work really well as well is that we like to start the sessions by asking the employee, how do you see the business doing? And how powerful is to be able to have a one-on-one with everybody in the business and ask them, how do you think the business is doing? Because when does an employee get to say how the business is doing? In no other setup. Like it just doesn't happen, because of just a time thing, right? Like those conversations that happen naturally, but to have to set the time and start with that question, I believe it really lowers the boundaries, because it's not a one-way thing. It's not the company telling you what you need to do and if you're doing well or not. It's you tell me how the company's doing, how are you doing with this company, and that really helps them open up and then start having real discussions and conversations.
And I think that's, referring back to individual goals in their work and what they want to achieve, and linking with team goals or company goals, there can't be a disconnect. And it's got to, it's got to lead on from the other. And letting them see that it's attainable, and saying, well, as an individual, these are your goals, these are our team goals, and look at the important piece of the puzzle that you play. And that also gives such a sense of belonging for the employee, which is great, because that teamwork, is so key.
Yeah, exactly. That's it's 100%. It's being able to link that individual desires and what they want to achieve with what the company is needing. And it has happened to me lately quite a lot, actually, where we have very talented employees. And when they mention their personal aspirations, then you can see that the company is not in a position to provide an environment for those aspirations, just because, it's not a need, or it's just like they're quite strategic in one area. And then we usually do debriefs after every session to see if the person is aligned or not. That's how we call it. And you have to say, look, there's misalignment here, but it's almost like the opposite way, where the company cannot provide the best space for this person to kind of flourish. So you're likely to lose this high talented employee just because we are cutting short their aspirations, right? And so it always goes both ways. It's not, for HR, it's not looking at the company and seeing, how employees or individuals need to conform to what the company requires. Sometimes, always, you have the both sides that you're always looking at.
Yes, because you want to retain that talent and you want to attract, great talent. And if you can't meet the needs, then the company needs to relook and decide. So, and as you say, it's not always just coming from the company side. It's about making sure that you have that that you can retain your good staff.
Yeah. I really enjoy this conversation because we really unpacked in terms of consulting, right? How we look at HR and the value that HR can add. I do want to put out there a question that has been in my mind lately, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. Because in South Africa, I believe the stats of unemployment at the moment are like 35, 40% of South Africans. And I honestly, I can't, and I come from Argentina. Argentina has also a high unemployment rate. But there's something around, how do we look at the future of work with all the people that are unemployed? I'd love to hear from you in terms of when it comes to your consulting work and HR practices when you speak to businesses. What are you hearing out there in terms of recruitment, given opportunities, and looking at how to provide more jobs for people? Is it something that is part of your consultancy work?
It is. It definitely is, to understand, like I said, going into each company, each client, and having a look at their values, having a look at their staff, having a look at, really just doing a little, I suppose, HR audit or HR health check, and looking at when they do grow and the current staff complement that they do have and how that plays a role. And you do find that companies, I think the pandemic, I know we're like 4 years down the line, but that showed the world a different way of working, and that it was possible to, a lot of, your work from homes. Whereas I've got clients who are in office every day, Monday to Friday. And then I've got other clients who it's hybrid scenarios, and some that just haven't returned to the office at all. And I think that when it comes to also just skills, when it comes to looking at the profile of their staff, so their age and what that looks like, and staff companies are inclined to want to retain their talents, and certainly the work that they've invested in the employee loves working for them, but at the risk of now saying, well, based on your age, you need to go. They are looking at alternative ways to retain that talent, and whether it be contracts or whatever it is. But I think there's definitely a sense in most companies to not only provide jobs for people that are unemployed and find ways to bring them in, but to also retain the skills that they do have within the company. So I hope that sort of answers your question. But it depends on company to company and industry to industry. I mean, some industries, take a little bit of a dive sometimes, and then they're on the up again. And so when it comes to the recruitment, they're prepared to invest in the time that is required to find the right talent.
Yeah, I think it links back to what you were mentioning around culture before, that at the end of the day, it is a retention strategy, right? Like I recently started speaking to a company that quite a big size complement, but people leave. And actually, when it came to recruitment exercises, candidates were starting to decline to do interviews for this company because it gained a bad rep. So then you see, okay, this is definitely something for companies to consider. And then, something that we have also for a while now, we've been very intentional with our clients to do is that we don't want to recruit, we only want to recruit entry level. Because what that means is that you're more forced to look into career progression as opposed to thinking you're going to get skill out there. So let's look inside for promotions and internal recruitment for higher up positions. And we only recruit entry level. Because what entry level does is that every time you put a job out there and you get volumes of CVs. So these are all the people that are unemployed. So you're actually giving opportunity, and it's much easier for someone that's unemployed to go into entry level where they require some, easy to attain. And then if you have the right personality, the right, learning agility, then you can, see your way through other roles in the company. But that for us has become quite a key way to look into how to tap into, just because I know when you ask a CEO, what is that you're trying to achieve with your company? And I think that especially in South Africa, obviously companies want revenue growth. They want to make sure their staff are looked after through salaries at the end of the month. And they also have these big aspirations. SMEs are the ones that give South Africa the most employment out of all. So there is this very intrinsic aspirations of wanting to help and wanting a better, South Africa. So it's nice through, again, consulting work, and this could also be done with internal HR departments, to be very intentional around career progression with the company and hiring entry level people that come from getting a diploma, and they put the CVs out there in so many organizations, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said, and well, yes, again, going and looking at the company culture and having a look at how you can bring staff in and be mentored by those other staff, and have those staff, the current staff complement, be elevated into, their next step, and empowering those newcomers. And it's
exactly.
good.
Cool. Thank you so much, Vanita. I really enjoyed this conversation. As I said, I really hope that this conversation will help anybody that's in HR, but maybe permanently employed and want to explore consulting, or anybody that wants to kind of explore consulting work. How to get into it. What is that? How you engage with clients? What is the type of work that you can do? Because also for consulting, there's a type of work that can be done, and maybe other type of work that it's not necessarily the most suited for consulting. So I think we managed to unpack what are those jobs in HR that can be done by consultancies.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Rose, it's been so lovely chatting. I always enjoy our chats. But thank you very much for inviting me to have this little cup of tea with you, a cup of tea and a chat. And yes, I really, really do appreciate the time. And I hope that I hope that the rest of the week, I mean, it seems like a mini, I don't know, what is it, a mini Friday, Monday? But I really do hope that you have a lovely afternoon. And yes, it's been so wonderful hearing as well, the way that you go into dealing with your clients and finding out what really, I suppose, rocks their world. And that makes a big difference in helping the CEO grow his business, retain awesome talent, attract great talent as well, and make for, a happy work family.
Thank you so much, Vanita. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Rose. Enjoy the rest of the day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.